Test, 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 test. Howdy. Okay. Welcome, everyone, to an unabridged reading of A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens, Stave 1. There will be a VOD of this. If you are watching that VOD right now, you can jump to the 10-minute mark. That's when we are going to set up the stream, right now is when we're going to set up the stream. At the 10-minute mark, that setting up sign is going down, and we should be ready to start our unabridged reading. For anyone who is catching this VOD in 2025, between December 21st and December 24th, I'm going to be reading this every night, 8:30 p.m. U.S. Central Time. Stave 1 on the 21st, Stave 2 on the 22nd, Stave 3 on the 23rd, joined by Mr. Hardluck, as well as Goran and Kelly, and Stave 4 and 5 on Christmas Eve, December 24th of this year, 2025. If you're watching this in the far future, once again, you can jump straight to the 10-minute mark for the beginning of reading Stave 1. Everybody else, I'm going to be posting some links. I'm posting the in the Twitch and YouTube chats, I'm posting the joehills.net/soon link, which is the calendar where you can always find my live streams. I'm also, as part of my stream setup process, going to be posting the tipping link. And then once I've got all that out of the way, I'm going to be posting a link to the unabridged Christmas Carol version that I'm reading from on Project Gutenberg. Give me a minute to make sure I've got that pulled up properly. I also have to do a bunch of other stuff. The reason there's no music this stream is because music would break the copyright thing, and then we wouldn't be able to have a VOD. So normally the 10 minutes of setup that I would do during the music, I am doing now. Once again, we are starting in 8 minutes from now with our live reading of A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and we're going to say, as a reminder, tips are welcome via paypal.me/joehills and YouTube Super Chat. We're keeping track of these on the abacus. I will not be interrupting the middle of a sentence to acknowledge tips. It'll probably be at logical breaks in the text. Okay. So, other things that we need to do. What are we doing? We need to thank Lost Cult Music for tipping 3. First off, thank you, Lost Cult Music. That gets us 17 away from the next Face Gamer expansion milestone. Woo, Dickens. Let's go Ghost of Christmas. Oh, yeah. So, I was like, what are the setup steps I still haven't done? Project Gutenberg. Let me get you that Christmas Carol link. Dun, dun, dun. Now, we want the unabridged. Let me make sure I'm getting the right one here. Okay. Boom, 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 boom. Read now. Okay. So we've got the original first edition cover. Yes, that's the one we want. Okay. So read along. We're going to get those read along links in here. We are 6 minutes from our start time. Just doing some frantic setup. We've also got to post some links on social media saying that we're going live with our annual Christmas Carol reading. Welcome, Queen Dark Lady, in the Discord. The Watchers has got my hot cocoa, and I'm ready to go. Excellent. I've got some nice warm coffee. Good for the throat with the long reading. Okay. So I am going to open up my Blue Sky real quick. bsky.app. Okay. Going live with my annual Annual reading of the unabridged Charles Dickens classic, A Christmas Carol. And then I should post the YouTube link, because the YouTube link, if the VOD stays up, which is the plan, will continue to work. So I need to copy that VOD link. Get shareable link. Want to remove that question mark feature equals share. Okay. Dun, dun, dun. Okay, we're going to post that. We're going to go post over here real quick. Going to go over to linkedin.com. The single best place to post anything. Bum, 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 bum. Bum, 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 bum. Tumblr. Hey, thank you to Algorithm32 for tipping 20. That's going to get us 3 past our next phase camera expansion milestone. Who says, since you're reading this in a structure built over water, is this the unabridged version? Not quite. Not quite. Here we go. Time to expand, Joe. Oh, wow. The alt-tabbing out video setting. Hold on. Max frame rate 60. What is that called? The thing that lowers the frame rate when you alt-tab out? Reduce frame rate when minimized. Yeah, there we go. There we go. Okay, much better. Much better. Okay. I'm wondering if I should move the lectern. I think I should move the lectern over here. Yeah, we're going to move the lectern. And we have, yeah, because we have 3 minutes left before we have to read. Did I post this to Tumblr? No. Tumblr.com. The problem is I don't have the URL for YouTube until we go live. So everything has to be a Christmas Carol Hermitcraft 11 Studio 11 on the Palapa Pier. Joe Hills, one word, Joe Hills TSD. Charles Dickens. Post now. Okay. So we have that posted everywhere, and now we've got 2 minutes and 15 seconds to frantically fix anything that might be wrong over here. Okay. So I think we want to move that lectern, I was saying, over just a wee bit. Maybe this much. Yeah, and then have the lectern here and the... Oh, I wanted to... How many ender pearls do we have left? 2? Okay. Real quick. Which of these torches are the ones that are visible from there? Honestly, I don't even care at this point. All of these torches are basically bad, except for the fact that that is now going to be a problem. So we're going to put one there, just so these balconies are lit properly. Okay. Great. So that fixes the ugly torch problem we were having. Should we have something like that here just for now? I think that was the one that was in the shot. Yeah, let's assume that was the one in the shot. Hey, it was, kind of. Okay. So we are now 30 seconds from when I told the people to skip ahead to in their VOD. And that's a good time as any to remove some of this fancy gear. Gear. Oh boy. Okay. We are at the 10-minute mark. Welcome back to everybody who skipped ahead in the VOD. I am doing some final inventory management so that we can remove our fancy gear and set up our camera here. Welcome to a live reading of Stave 1 of A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. And I've got the link pinned in both of my chats for the story. We're going to go ahead and acknowledge any last-minute tips that rolled in, and then we're going to take down that setting up now side and get this going. So real quick, F3 and D here. So unfortunately, I've got to stay Alt-tabbed out of Minecraft so that I can scroll forward in the thing I'm reading. But, okay. And you can find a link to the full text in the description below. Real quick, thank you very much, Miss Gold Fox, for tipping 20, who says, I love this tradition to read A Christmas Carol on stream. Thanks, Joe. Well, thank you, Miss Gold Fox. You helped make this show possible. That gets us 3 past our next face camera expansion milestone. Y'all have seen that money go straight to my head, but now, like Jacob Marley, these chains I forged in life are here to remind me that humanity was my business as they begin to pull me down to the deep below. Enter the Jost. Ba, 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 ba. Lowering the Joe pasty now to 90%. And so, yeah, let's go ahead and begin to read A Christmas Carol. Make sure that was the last tip that just rolled in. Great, great, great. And we are only going to be acknowledging tips at logical breaks in the text. Don't worry, it's not going to be in the middle of a sentence or anything like that. Okay. So we have the text in front of me. We have the link posted. We need to remove the setting up now sign to indicate that it is indeed time to read A Christmas Carol. All right. This is a live reading. I don't rehearse this. I read this once a year. I've been reading this for years, and this is a fun little tradition because I want to encourage folks to just enjoy sitting around and reading with their friends. Charles Dickens used to read this story in live theater in London as a holiday tradition. It was very popular then, and I'm glad to have the opportunity to kind of continue a little bit of that tradition here. But yeah, I'm not trying to do this studio perfect. This is not an audio book. This is not something, once again, that I've rehearsed. This is just something I do every year as a way to encourage folks to have some fun getting together, get a warm drink. I got my coffee here. And just enjoy each other's company and enjoy a story of the season. So, without further ado, I present to you, live from Studio 11 on the Palapa Pier, A Christmas Carol in Prose, Being a Ghost Story of Christmas, by Charles Dickens. Preface. I have endeavored in this ghostly little book to raise the ghost of an idea which shall not put my readers out of humor with themselves, with each other, with the season, or with me. May it haunt their houses pleasantly, and no one wish to lay it. Their faithful friend and servant, Charles Dickens, December 1843. Stave 1. Marley's Ghost. Marley was dead, to begin with. There is no doubt whatever about that. The register of his burial was signed by the clergyman, the clerk, the undertaker, and the chief mourner. Scrooge signed it, and Scrooge's name was good upon change for anything he chose to put his hand to. Old Marley was dead as a doornail. Mind, I don't mean to say that I know of my own knowledge that what there is particularly dead about a doornail. I might have been inclined myself to regard a coffin nail as the deadest piece of ironmongery in the trade, but the wisdom of our ancestors is in the simile, and my unhallowed hands shall not diminish it, or the country's done for. You will therefore permit me to repeat emphatically that Marley was dead as a doornail. Scrooge knew he was dead. Of course he did. How could it be otherwise? Scrooge and he were partners for I don't know how many years. Scrooge was his sole executor, his sole administrator, his sole assign, his sole residuary legatee, his sole friend, and sole mourner. And even Scrooge was not so dreadfully cut up by the sad event, but that he was an excellent man of business on the very day of the funeral, and solemnized it with an undoubted bargain. The mention of Marley's funeral brings me back to the point I started from. There is no doubt that Marley was dead. This must be distinctly understood, or nothing wonderful can come of the story I am going to relate. If we were not perfectly convinced that Hamlet's father died before the play began, there would be nothing more remarkable in his taking a stroll at night in an easterly wind upon his own ramparts than there would be in any other middle-aged gentleman rashly turning out after dark in a breezy spot. Say St. Paul's churchyard, for instance, literally to astonish his son's weak mind. Scrooge never painted out old Marley's name. There it stood years afterwards above the warehouse door. Scrooge and Marley. The firm was known as Scrooge and Marley. Sometimes people new to the business called Scrooge, and sometimes Marley, but he answered to both names. It was all the same to him. Oh, but he was a tight-fisted hand at the grindstone, Scrooge. He's squeezing, wrenching, grasping, scraping, clutching, covetous old sinner. Hard and sharp as flint, from which no steel had ever struck out generous fire. Secret and self-contained and solitary as an oyster. The cold within him froze his old features, nipped his pointed nose, shriveled his cheek, stiffened his gait, made his eyes red, his thin lips blue, and spoke out shrewdly in his grating voice. A frosty rime was on his head, and on his eyebrows, and his wiry chin. He carried his own low temperature always about with him. He iced his office in the dog days and didn't thaw it 1 degree at Christmas. External heat and cold had little influence on Scrooge. No warmth could warm, no wintry weather chill him. No wind that blew was bitterer than he. No falling snow was more intent upon its purpose. No pelting rain less open to entreaty. Foul weather didn't know where to have him. The heaviest rain and snow and hail and sleet could boast of the advantage over him in only one respect. They often came down handsomely, and Scrooge never did. Nobody ever stopped him in the street to say, with gladsome looks, "My dear Scrooge, how are you? When will you come to see me?" No beggars implored him to bestow a trifle. No children asked him what o'clock it was. No man or woman ever once in all his life inquired the way to such and such a place of Scrooge. Even the blind men's dogs appeared to know him, and when they saw him coming on, would tug their owners into doorways and up courts, and then would wag their tails as though they said, No eye at all is better than an evil eye, Dark Master. But why'd Scrooge care? It was the very thing he liked, to edge his way along the crowded paths of life, warning all human sympathy to keep its distance, was what the knowing ones call nuts to Scrooge. Once upon a time, of all the good days in the year, on Christmas Eve, old Scrooge sat busy in his counting house. It was cold, bleak, biting weather, foggy withal, and he could hear the people in the court outside go wheezing up and down, beating their hands upon their breasts and stamping their feet upon the pavement stones to warm them. The city clocks had only just gone 3, but it was quite dark already. It had not been light all day, and candles were flaring in the windows of the neighboring offices like ruddy smears upon the palpable brown air. The fog came pouring in at every chink and keyhole, and was so dense without that although the court was of the narrowest, the houses opposite were mere phantoms. To see the dingy cloud come drooping down, obscuring everything, one might have thought that nature lived hard by and was brewing on a large scale. The door of Scrooge's counting house was open, that he might keep an eye upon his clerk, who, in a dismal little cell beyond, a sort of tank, was copying letters. Scrooge had a very small fire, but the clerk's fire was so very much smaller that it looked like one coal. But he couldn't replenish it, for Scrooge kept the coal box in his own room, and so surely as the clerk came in with the shovel, the master predicted that it would be necessary for them to part. Wherefore the clerk put on his white comforter and tried to warm himself at the candle, in which effort, not being a man of strong imagination, he failed. "A Merry Christmas, Uncle! God save you!" cried a cheerful voice. It was the voice of Scrooge's nephew, who came upon him so quickly that this was the first intimation he had of his approach. "Bah!" said Scrooge. "Humbug!" He had so heated himself with rapid walking in the fog and frost, this nephew of Scrooge's, that he was all in a glow. His face was ruddy and handsome, his eyes sparkled, and his breath smoked again. "Christmas a humbug, Uncle?" said Scrooge's nephew. "You don't mean that, I'm sure." "I do. Merry Christmas! What right have you to be merry? What reason have you to be merry? You're poor enough." "Come then, what right have you to be dismal? What reason have you to be morose? You are rich enough." Scrooge, having no better answer ready on the spur of the moment, said, "Bah!" again, and followed it up with, "Humbug!" "Don't be cross, Uncle." "What else can I be when I live in such a world of fools as this? Merry Christmas. Out upon Merry Christmas. What is Christmas time to you but a time for paying bills without money, a time for finding yourself a year older, but not an hour richer, a time for balancing your books and having every item in 'em through a round dozen of months presented dead against you? If I could work my will," said Scrooge indignantly, "every idiot who goes about with Merry Christmas in his lips should be boiled in his own pudding and buried with a stake of holly through his heart. He should." "Uncle!" pleaded the nephew. "Nephew!" returned the uncle sternly. "Keep Christmas in your own way, and let me keep it in mine." "Keep it? But you don't keep it." "Let me leave it alone then. Much good may it do you. Much good has it ever done you." "There are many things from which I might have derived good, by which I have not profited, I dare say. Christmas among the rest. But I am sure I have always thought of Christmas time when it has come round. Apart from the veneration due to its sacred name and origin, if anything belonging to it can be apart from that, as a good time, a kind, forgiving, charitable, pleasant time, the only time I know of in the long calendar of the year when men and women seem by one consent to open their shut-up hearts freely and to think of people below them as if they really were fellow passengers of the grave, and not another race of creatures bound on other journeys. And therefore, uncle, though it has never put a scrap of gold or silver in my pocket, I believe it has done me good and will do me good, and I say, God bless it." The clerk in the tank involuntarily applauded, becoming immediately sensible of the impropriety. He poked the fire and extinguished the last frail spark forever. "Let me hear another sound from you, and you'll keep Christmas by losing your situation. You are quite a powerful speaker, sir," he added, turning to his nephew. "I wonder you don't go into Parliament." "Don't be angry with me, uncle. Come, dine with me, dine with us tomorrow." Scrooge said that he would see him. Yes, indeed he did. He went the whole length of the expression and said he would see him in that extremity first. "But why? Why?" "Why did you get married?" "Because I fell in love." "Because you fell in love?" growled Scrooge, as if that were the only one thing in the world more ridiculous than a Merry Christmas. "Good afternoon." "Nay, uncle, but you never came to see me before that happened. Why give it as a reason for not coming now?" "Good afternoon." "I want nothing from you. I ask nothing of you. Why cannot we be friends?" "Good afternoon." "I'm sorry, with all my heart, to find you so resolute. We have never had any quarrel to which I have been a party, but I have made the trial in homage to Christmas, and I'll keep my Christmas humor to the last. So, a Merry Christmas, Uncle."
"Good afternoon,"
said Scrooge, "and a Happy New Year."
"Good afternoon,"
said Scrooge. His nephew left the room without an angry word notwithstanding. He stopped at the outer door to bestow the greetings of the season on the clerk, who, cold as he was warmer than Scrooge, for he returned them cordially.
"There's another fellow.
muttered Scrooge, who overheard him.
My clerk, with 15 shillings a week, and a wife, and a family, talking about Merry Christmas, all retired to Bedlam.
This lunatic, in letting Scrooge's nephew out, had let 2 other people in. They were portly gentlemen, pleasant to behold, and now stood, with their hats off, in Scrooge's office. They had books and papers in their hands, and bowed to him. "Scrooge's and Molly's, I believe," said one of the gentlemen, referring to his list. "Have I the pleasure of addressing Mr. Scrooge or Mr. Molly?"
Mr. Marley has been dead, these 7 years,
Scrooge replied.
He died, 7 years ago, this very night.
"We have no doubt his liberality is well represented by his surviving partner," said the gentleman, presenting his credentials. It certainly was, for they had been 2 kindred spirits. At the ominous word, liberality, Scrooge frowned and shook his head and handed the credentials back. "At this festive season of the year, Mr. Scrooge," said the gentleman, taking up a pen, "it must be more than usually desirable that we should make some slight provision for the poor and destitute who suffer greatly at the present time. Many thousands are in want of common necessaries. Hundreds of thousands are in want of common comforts, sir."
Are there, no prisons?
"Plenty of prisons," said the gentleman, laying the pen down again.
And, the union workhouses, are they still in operation?
"They are still. I wish I could say they were not."
The, treadmill and the poor law are in full vigor then?"
said Scrooge. "Both are very busy, sir."
Oh, I was afraid from what you said at first that something had occurred to stop them in their, useful course. I'm very glad to hear it.
"Under the impression that they scarcely furnish Christian cheer of mind or body to the multitude, a few of us are endeavoring to raise a fund to buy the poor some meat and drink and means of warmth. We choose this time because it is a time of all others, when want is keenly felt and abundance rejoices. What shall I put you down for?"
Nothing.
"You wish to be anonymous?"
I wish to be left alone. Since you asked me what I wish, gentlemen, that is my answer. I don't make myself merry at Christmas, and I can't afford to make idle people merry. I help to support the establishments I have mentioned. They cost enough, and those who are badly off must go there.
"Many can't go there, and many would rather die."
If they would rather die, yeah, they'd better do it and decrease the surplus population. Besides, excuse me, I don't know.
"But you might know it."
It's not my business. It's enough for a man to understand his own business and not to interfere with other people's. Mine occupies me constantly. Good afternoon, gentlemen.
Seeing clearly that it would be useless to pursue the point, the gentleman withdrew. Scrooge resumed his labors with an improved opinion of himself and in a more facetious temper than was usual with him. Meanwhile, the fog and darkness thickened so that people ran about with flaring links, proffering their services to go before horses and carriages and conduct them on their way. The ancient tower of a church, whose gruff old bell was always peeping slyly down at Scrooge out of a Gothic window in the wall, became invisible and struck the hours and quarters in the clouds with tremulous vibrations afterwards, as if its teeth were chattering in its frozen head up there. The cold became intense. In the main street, in the corner of the court, some laborers were repairing the gas pipes, and it lighted a great fire in a brazier, round which a party of ragged men and boys were gathered, warming their hands and winking their eyes before the blaze in rapture. The water plug being left in solitude, its overflowing sullenly congealed and turned to misanthropic ice. The brightness of the shops, where holly sprigs and berries crackled in the lamp heat of the windows, made pale faces ruddy as they passed. Poulterers' and grocers' trades became a splendid joke, a glorious pageant, with which it was next to impossible to believe that such dull principles as bargain and sale had anything to do. The Lord Mayor, in the stronghold of the mighty mansion house, gave orders to his 50 cooks and butlers to keep Christmas as a Lord Mayor's household should, and even the little tailor, whom he had fined 5 shillings on the previous Monday for being drunk and bloodthirsty in the streets, stirred up tomorrow's pudding in his garret, while his lean wife and baby sallied out to buy the beef. Foggier yet, and colder. Piercing, searching, biting cold. If the good St. Dunstan had but nipped the evil spirit's nose with a touch of weather such as that, instead of using his familiar weapons, then indeed he would have roared to lusty purpose. The owner of one scant young nose, gnawed and mumbled by the hungry cold as bones are gnawed at by dogs, stooped down at Scrooge's keyhole to regale him with a Christmas carol. But at the first sound of "God rest ye, my gentle man, let nothing you dismay," Scrooge seized the ruler with such energy of action that the singer fled in terror, leaving the keyhole to the fog and even more congenial frost. At length, the hour of shutting up the counting-house arrived. With an ill will, Scrooge dismounted from his stool, and tacitly admitted the fact to the expectant clerk in the tank, who instantly snuffed his candle out and put on his hat.
"You'll want all day tomorrow, I suppose."
"If it's quite convenient, sir."
"It's not convenient, and it's not fair. If I was to stop half a crown for it, you'd think yourself ill-used, I'll be bound."
The clerk smiled faintly.
"And yet, you don't think me ill-used when I pay a day's wages for no work."
The clerk observed that it was only once a year.
"A poor excuse for picking a man's pocket every 25th of December,"
said Scrooge, buttoning his greatcoat to the chin.
"But I suppose you must have the whole day. Be here all the earlier the next morning."
The clerk promised that he would, and Scrooge walked out with a growl. The office was closed in a twinkling, and the clerk, with the long ends of his white comforter dangling below his waist, for he boasted no greatcoat, went down a slide on Cornhill at the end of a lane of boys 20 times, in honor of it being Christmas Eve, and then ran home to Camden Town as hard as he could pelt, to play at Blind Man's Bluff. Scrooge took his melancholy dinner in his usual melancholy tavern, and having read all the newspapers and beguiled the rest of the evening with his banker's book, went home to bed. He lived in chambers which had once belonged to his deceased partner. They were a gloomy suite of rooms in a lowering pile of buildings up a yard where it had so little business to be that one could scarcely help fancying it must have run there when it was a young house, playing hide and seek with the other houses, and then forgotten the way out again. It was old enough now, and dreary enough, for nobody lived in it but Scrooge, the other rooms all being let out as offices. The yard was so dark that even Scrooge, who knew its every stone, was fain to grope with his hands. The fog and frost so hung about the black old gateway of the house that it seemed as if the genius of the weather sat in mournful meditation on the threshold. Now, it is a fact that there was nothing at all particular about the knocker on the door, except that it was very large. It is also a fact that Scrooge had seen it night and morning during his whole residence in that place, and also that Scrooge had as little of what is called fancy about him as any man in the city of London, even including, which is a bold word, the corporation, aldermen, and livery. Let it also be borne in mind that Scrooge had not bestowed one thought on Marley since his last mention of his 7 years dead partner that afternoon. And then, let any man explain to me, if he can, how it happened that Scrooge, having his key in the lock of the door, saw in the knocker, without it undergoing any immediate process of change, not a knocker, but Marley's face. Marley's face. It was not in impenetrable shadow as the other objects in the yard were, but had a dismal light about it, like a bad lobster in a dark cellar. It was not angry or ferocious, but looked at Scrooge as Marley used to look, with ghostly spectacles turned up on its ghostly forehead. The hair was curiously stirred, as if by breath or hot air. Though the eyes were wide open, they were perfectly motionless. That and its livid color made it horrible. But its horror seemed to be in spite of the face and beyond its control, rather than a part of its own expression. As Scrooge looked fixedly at this phenomena, it was a knocker again. To say that he was not startled, or that his blood was not conscious of a terrible sensation to which it had been a stranger from infancy, would be untrue. But he put his hand upon the key he had relinquished, turned it sturdily, walked in, and lighted his candle. He did pause, with a moment's irresolution, before he shut the door, and he did look cautiously behind it at first, as if he half expected to be terrified with the sight of Marley's pigtail sticking out into the hall. But there was nothing on the back of the door, except the screws and nuts that held the knocker on. And so he said, "Pooh, pooh," and closed it with a bang. The sound resounded through the house like thunder. Every room above and every cask in the wine merchant's cellars below appeared to have a separate peal of echoes of its own. Scrooge was not a man to be frightened by echoes. He fastened the door and walked across the hall and up the stairs and slowly too, trimming his candle as he went. You may talk vaguely about driving a coach and six up a good old flight of stairs or through a bad young act of parliament. But I mean to say, you might have got a hearse up that staircase and taken it broadwise with the splinter bar toward the wall and the door toward the balustrades and done it easy. There was plenty of width for that and room to spare, which is perhaps the reason why Scrooge thought he saw a locomotive hearse going on before him in the gloom. Half a dozen gas lamps out of the street wouldn't have lighted the entry too well, so you may suppose that it was pretty dark with Scrooge's dip. Up Scrooge went, not caring a button for that. Darkness is cheap, and Scrooge liked it. But before he shut his heavy door, he walked through his rooms to see that all was right. He had just enough recollection of the face, to desire to do that. Sitting room, bedroom, lumber room, all as they should be. Nobody under the table, nobody under the sofa, small fire in the grate, spoon and basin ready, little saucepan of gruel. Scrooge had a cold in his head. Upon the hob, nobody under the bed, nobody in the closet, nobody in his dressing gown, which was hanging up in a suspicious attitude against the wall. Lumber room as usual, old fire guard, old shoes, 2 fish baskets, washing stand on 3 legs, and a poker. Quite satisfied, he closed his door and locked himself in, double locked himself in, which was not his custom. Thus secured against surprise, he took off his cravat, put on his dressing gown and slippers, and his nightcap, and sat down before the fire to take his gruel. It was a very low fire indeed. Nothing on such a bitter night. He was obliged to sit close to it and brood over it before he could extract the least sensation of warmth from such a handful of fuel. The fireplace was an old one, built by some Dutch merchant long ago and paved all round with quaint Dutch tiles designed to illustrate the scriptures. There were Cains and Abels, Pharaoh's daughters, queens of Sheba, angelic messengers descending through the air on clouds like feather beds. Abraham's, Belshazzar's, apostles putting off to sea in butter boats, hundreds of figures to attract his thoughts, and yet that face of Marley, 7 years dead, came up like the prophet's ancient rod and swallowed up the whole. If each smooth tile had been a blank at first, with power to shape some picture on its surface from the disjointed fragments of his thoughts, there would have been a copy of old Marley's head on every one.
Humbug,
said Scrooge, and walked across the room. After several turns, he sat down again. As he threw his head back in the chair, his glance happened to rest upon a bell, a disused bell, that hung in the room, and communicated, for some purpose now forgotten, with a chamber in the highest story of the building. It was with great astonishment, and with a strange, inexplicable dread, that as he looked, he saw this bell begin to swing. It swung so softly at the outset that it scarcely made a sound, but soon it rang out loudly, and so did every other bell in the house. This might have lasted half a minute, or a minute, but it seemed an hour. The bells ceased as they had begun, together. They were succeeded by a clanking noise, deep down below, as if some person were dragging a heavy chain over the casks in the wine merchant's cellar. Scrooge then remembered to have heard that ghosts in haunted houses were described as dragging chains. The cellar door flew open with a booming sound, and then he heard the noise much louder on the floors below, then coming up the stairs, then coming straight toward his door.
It's humbug still,
said Scrooge.
I won't believe it.
His color changed, though, when, without a pause, it came on through the heavy door and passed into the room before his eyes. Upon its coming in, the dying flame leaped up as though it cried, "I know him! Marley's ghost!" and fell again. The same face. The very same. Marley, in his pigtail, usual waistcoat, tights, and boots, the tassels on the latter bristling, like his pigtail and his coat skirts and the hair upon his head. The chain he drew was clasped about his middle. It was long and wound about him like a tail, and it was made, for Scrooge observed it closely, of cash boxes, keys, padlocks, ledgers, deeds, and heavy purses wrought in steel. His body was transparent, so that Scrooge, observing him and looking through his waistcoat, could see the two buttons on his coat behind. Scrooge had often heard it said that Marley had no bowels, but he had never believed it until now. Nor did he believe it even now. Though he looked the phantom through and through, and saw it standing before him, though he felt the chilling influence of its death-cold eyes, and marked the very texture of the folded kerchief bound about its head and chin, which wrapper he had not observed before, he was still incredulous, and fought against his senses.
How now?
Said Scrooge, caustic and cold as ever.
What do you want with me?
Much!
Marley's voice.
No doubt about it.
Who are you?
Ask me who I was.
Who were you then?
Said Scrooge, raising his voice.
You're particular for a shade.
He was going to say to a shade, but substituted this as more appropriate. In life, I was your partner, Jacob Marley.
Can you sit down?
Asked Scrooge, looking doubtfully at him.
Do it then.
Scrooge asked the question because he didn't know whether a ghost so transparent might find himself in a condition to take a chair, and felt that in the event of it being impossible, it might involve the necessity of an embarrassing explanation. But the ghost sat down on the opposite side of the fireplace, as if he were quite used to it. You don't believe in me, said the spirit.
I don't,
said Scrooge. What evidence evidence would you have of my reality beyond that of your senses?
I don't know.
Why do you doubt your senses?
Because a little thing affects them. A slight disorder of the stomach makes them cheats. You may be an undigested bit of beef, a blot of mustard, a crumb of cheese, a fragment of an underdone potato. There's more of gravy than of grave about you, whatever you are.
Scrooge was not much in the habit of cracking jokes, nor did he feel in his heart by any means waggish then. The truth is that he tried to be smart as a means of distracting his own attention and keeping down his terror, for the specter's voice disturbed the very marrow in his bones. To sit staring at those fixed, glazed eyes in silence for a moment would play, Scrooge felt, the very deuce with him. There was something very awful, too, in the specter's being provided with an infernal atmosphere of its own. Scrooge could not feel it himself, but this was clearly the case, for though the ghost sat perfectly motionless, its hair and skirts and tassels were still agitated, as by the hot vapor from an oven.
You see this toothpick?
Said Scrooge, returning quickly to the charge for the reason just assigned, and wishing, though it were only for a second, to divert the vision's stony gaze from himself. I do, replied the ghost.
You are not looking at it.
But I see it, notwithstanding.
Well, I have but to swallow this, and be, for the rest of my days, persecuted by a legion of goblins, all of my own creation. Humbug, I tell you, humbug.
At this, the spirit raised a frightful cry, and shook its chain with such a dismal and appalling noise that Scrooge held on tight to his chair to save himself from falling in a swoon. But how much greater was his horror when the phantom, taking off the bandage round its head, as if it were too warm to wear indoors, its lower jaw dropped upon a brow. Scrooge fell upon his knees and clasped his hands before his face.
Mercy! Dreadful apparition! Why do you trouble me?
Man of the worldly mind, replied the ghost, do you believe in me or not?
I do. I must. But why do spirits walk the earth? And why do they come to me?
It is required of every man that the spirit within him should walk abroad among his fellow men and travel far and wide. And if that spirit goes not forth in life, it is condemned to do so after death. It is doomed to wander through the world. Oh, woe is me! And witness what it cannot share, but might have shared on earth, and turn to happiness. Again, the specter raised a cry, and shook its chain, and wrung its shadowy hands.
You are fettered,
said Scrooge, trembling.
Tell me why.
I wear the chain I forged in life. I made it link by link and yard by yard. I girded it on of my own free will, and of my own free will I wore it. Is its pattern strange to you? Scrooge trembled more and more. Oh, would you know the weight and length of the strong coil you bear yourself? It was full as heavy and as long as this 7 Christmas Eves ago. You have labored on it since. It is a ponderous chain. Scrooge glanced about him on the floor, in the expectation of finding himself surrounded by some 50 or 60 fathoms of iron cable. But he could see nothing.
Jacob. Old Jacob Marley. Tell me more. Speak comfort to me, Jacob.
I have none to give. It comes from other regions, Ebenezer Scrooge, and is conveyed by other ministers to other kinds of men. Nor can I tell you what I would. A very little more is permitted to me. I cannot rest. I cannot stay. I cannot linger anywhere. My spirit never walked beyond our counting house. Mark me. In life, my spirit never roved beyond the narrow limits of our money-changing hole, and weary journeys lie before me. It was a habit with Scrooge, whenever he became thoughtful, to put his hands in his breeches pockets. Pondering on what the ghost had said, he did so now, but without lifting up his eyes or getting off his knees.
You must have been, very slow about it, Jacob,
Scrooge observed in a businesslike manner, though with humility and deference. Slow! The ghost repeated.
7 years dead and, traveling all the time.
The whole time, no rest, no peace, incessant torture of remorse.
You travel fast.
On the wings of the wind.
You, must have got over a great quantity of ground in 7 years.
The ghost, on hearing this, set up another cry and clanked its chain so hideously in the dead silence of the night that the ward would have been justified in indicting it for a nuisance. Oh, captive, bound and double-ironed, not to know that ages of incessant labor by immortal creatures for this earth must pass into eternity before the good of which it is susceptible is all developed, not to know that any Christian spirit working kindly in its little sphere, whatever it may be, will find its mortal life too short for its vast means of usefulness, not to know that no space of regret can make amends for one's life opportunity misused. Yet such was I, oh, such was I.
But you were always a good man of business, Jacob,
faltered Scrooge, who now began to apply this to himself. Business! Cried the ghost, wringing its hands again. Mankind was my business. The common welfare was my business. Charity, mercy, forbearance, and benevolence were all my business. The dealings of my trade were but a drop of water in the comprehensive ocean of my business. It held up its chain at arm's length, as if that were the cause of all its unavailing grief, and flung it heavily upon the ground again. At this time of the rolling year, I suffer most. Why did I walk through crowds of fellow beings with my eyes turned down, and never raise them to that blessed star which led the wise men to a poor abode? Were there no poor homes to which its light would have conducted me? Scrooge was very much dismayed to hear the spectre going on at this rate, and began to quake exceedingly. Hear me, my time is nearly gone.
I will, but don't be hard upon me. Don't be flowery, Jacob, pray.
How is it that I appear to you, before you, in a shape that you can see? I may not tell. I have sat invisible beside you many and many a day. It was not an agreeable idea. Scrooge shivered and wiped the perspiration from his brow. That is no light part of my penance. I am here tonight to warn you that you have yet a chance and a hope of escaping my fate, a chance and a hope of my procuring Ebenezer.
You always were a good friend to me. Thank you.
You will be haunted by 3 spirits. Scrooge's countenance fell almost as low as the ghosts had done.
Is that the chance and the hope you mentioned, Jacob?
He demanded in a faltering voice. It is.
I think I'd rather not.
Without their visits, you cannot hope to shun the path which I tread. Expect the first tomorrow when the bell tolls 1.
Couldn't I take them all at once and have it over, Jacob?
Hinted Scrooge. Expect the second on the next night at the same hour, the third upon the next night, when the last stroke of 12 has ceased to vibrate. Look to see me no more, and look that for your own sake you will remember what has passed between us. When it had said these words, the spectre took its wrapper from the table, bound it round its head as before. Scrooge knew this by the smart sound its teeth made when the jaws were brought together by the bandage. He ventured to raise his eyes again and found his supernatural visitor confronting him in an erect attitude with its chain wound over and about its arm. The apparition walked backward from him, and at every step it took, the window raised itself a little, so that when the spectre reached it, it was wide open. It beckoned Scrooge to approach, which he did. When they were within 2 paces of each other, Marley's ghost held up its hand, warning him to come no nearer. Scrooge stopped, not so much in obedience as in surprise and fear, for on the raising of the hand, he became sensible of confused noises in the air, incoherent sounds of lamentation and regret, wailings inexpressibly sorrowful and self-accusatory. The spectre, after listening for a moment, joined in the mournful dirge and floated out on the bleak, dark night. Scrooge followed to the window, desperate in his curiosity. He looked out. The air was filled with phantoms, wandering hither and thither in restless haste, and moaning as they went. Every one of them wore chains like Marley's ghost. Some few, they might be guilty governments, were linked together. None were free. Many had been personally known to Scrooge in their lives. He had been quite familiar with one old ghost in a white waistcoat with a monstrous iron safe attached to its ankle, who cried piteously at being unable to assist a wretched woman with an infant, whom it saw below upon a doorstep. The misery with them all was, clearly, that they sought to interfere, for good, in human matters and had lost the power forever. Whether these creatures faded into mist or mist enshrouded them, he could not tell. But they and their spirit voices faded together, and the night became as it had been when he walked home. Scrooge closed the window and examined the door by which the ghost had entered. It was double locked, as he had locked it with his own hands, and the bolts were undisturbed. He tried to say humbug, but stopped at the first syllable, and being, from the emotion he had undergone, or the fatigues of the day, or his own glimpse of the invisible world, or the dull conversation of the ghost, or the lateness of the hour, much in need of repose, went straight to bed without undressing, and fell asleep upon the instant. And that concludes Stave 1 of A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. Hope you all have been enjoying this reading so far. If you are watching this in the VOD, here's the time to stop and go to the next episode, assuming you're far enough in the future that the next episode exists. Once again, I am filming these live over the course of December 21st through 24th in the year Anno Domini 2025? Yeah, that sounds about right. I was like, what is Latin? Also, what are integers? Boy, we're going to get some of this stuff right. So, if you're here for the VOD, you can skip to the next one. If you're here watching live, we have a lot of people that we need to thank. We got a raid right when I started reading. If anybody is still here, I think it was a Linksy raid. I'm sorry, the alert has already scrolled off the top. But who was it that raided? Can we make sure that we thank them? Is anybody still here from that raid? If so, thank you for coming in and, with no idea possibly what was going on and then sticking around if you did stick around. Then we also have some tips that we need to acknowledge. So let's go ahead and thank Mr. Phillips for tipping 2. Let's see, we were 7 away from the next face camera expansion milestone. Now we're 5 away. And then we got a tip from Darth Worthen for 10. Thank you very much, Darth Worthen. So that gets us 5 past our next face camera expansion milestone. Please direct your attention to my face because we're about to expand Jost. Lowering the Joe Pasky now to 80%. It was Linksy. Yeah, thank you again, Linksy, for the raid, and thank you to anybody who came in. But yeah, like I was like 5 sentences in when you guys arrived. I was on like Marley is dead as a doornail. We had just read the preface. It got to Marley is dead as a doornail. And then it's like, here's a few hundred people. I'm like, we're going. We started. We're going. We got a few other tips we need to thank people for via PayPal. Thank you, Padawan S, for tipping 20, who says, thanks, Joe. The reading is a joy. Merry Christmas. Well, thank you very much, Padawan S. That's going to get us 5 past our next expansion milestone. Please direct your attention to my face because we're about to expand Jost. Lowering the Joe Pasky now to 70%. It actually worked really well having my face in front of me at the lectern. I don't know. I was kind of pleased with how that framing ended up working. Do you guys have any thoughts on the reading while I pull up the next tip? This one is very generous. Wow, this must have come in a while ago because it references also something from very early. Unlike a lobster in a dark cellar, hopefully this tip finds its way to a brighter holiday tinge. Thank you very much to Marcy. Sorry, not Marcy. Darcy. Mr. Hardluck wrote, wait, Marley was dead right as I was trying to read this, and I've combined Marley and Darcy. Thank you, Darcy, for tipping a incredibly generous 250. So let's see, that's going to be, let's see, we were 15 away from the next one, and then we go whoop. So that's 200. And then this is getting us back to where we were. Whoop. Wait. No, hold on. Let me do some math here. Okay, so yes. So that is 12 face camera expansion milestones. Hey, thank you, Buff Boba, for the raid. We were just reading A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens, unabridged. Please direct your attention to my face. We got 12 face camera expansion milestones incoming. I'm going to need to use the lower rack of the abacus to keep track of all those. So thank you very much, Darcy, for that incredibly generous tip. Here we go. Expand Jost. La da da da. Lowering the opacity now to 60%. Numero dos. Even larger Jost. La da da da. Enter the T. Joe Eckhilsberg stage here, lowering the opacity now to 50%. Okay. Numero trace, even larger face. La da da da. Lowering the opacity now to 42%. Numero quattro. How about some more Jost? La da da da. Lowering the opacity now to 32%. So each Nissan she go 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 expand. Jost, la da da da. Lowering the opacity now to 22%. Uno, dos, tres, cuatro, cinco, cinco, seis. All the Josts say I'm pretty transparent for Spectre. Oh no, I did that wrong. Hold on. Lowering the opacity, yeah, I didn't make that rhyme work either, to 16%. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Marley's ghost didn't go on to heaven. Marley's ghost didn't go on to heaven. At least not yet. Anyway, lowering the opacity now to 12%. So let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Here we go. Expand Joe and make him less opaque. Da 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 da. The rhymes get weaker as we get higher up in numbers. We don't always have this many jumps in opacity in a row. Lowering the opacity now to 9%. And then number 9, expanding super fine. La da da da. Oh no. OBS starts really fighting me when the camera gets this big. So thank you again to Darcy. Here we go. Expand me. Dee 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 dee. Lowering the opacity now to 6%. Number 10, let's expand once again. Do 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 do. Da 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 da. La da da da. Da 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 da. Lowering the opacity now to 3%. And looks like number 11 is about to blow out the camera. So here we go. Expand Jost. La da da da. We actually have a special song that we can't play because I don't want to risk the copyright strike. But here we go.
Webcam expander. Webcam expander.
I can't sing this as a Beetlejuice.
Wow, 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 wow. Hey, it's me, the Beetlejuice here. It's off-color optics from a broken cam, and some of the chat just throws up its hands. The Jost is Beetle for showtime now. It's a heady job, and he wants to be a webcam expander. Webcam expander. So anyway, webcam expander. So let's see. So that means that the remaining 30 goes on the abacus here. Yeah. Because we switched over a $50 milestone. So we did 11 $20 milestones. Then the last thing carries over, putting us now 20 away from the next Beetlejuice milestone. Tips are welcome via paypal.me/Joe Hills and YouTube Super Chat. We're going to go ahead and call this last call for tips here. Because this was a big day of reading. And we got a big day tomorrow, too. Morning stream, we're going to be doing some more work on the studio so that this looks even better. Get some decorations around this side here. I don't know. We'll make the whole place really shine. Right now we've only got one ornament there. It's a single phantom head. Not looking too great. Okay. But yeah, so if you missed the stream earlier today, we got the news desk set in with all of our clocks here. That's looking good. I'm excited about that. But yeah, so fantastic stream. Everybody had a great time. We're going to stick around a few minutes for last call for tips, but this is really a wind down moment. So yeah, if you're still here in the VOD, Oh, why am I not in slot 9? I guess you can wait until I get into slot 9, then you can be impressed by how good I am at that. Yeah, look at me on the Beetlejuice. I'm in slot 9. Hey. Guess maybe I should go get a screen or something for that. Big Papa House says the high-end sounds got cut out. The bell, the rattling chains. Yeah, there's a filter on the voice thing that I was using to cut out the air conditioning or heating sound. I'm wondering if maybe some of that filtered that. Oh well. When did this get cold? Is it just my frightening, frigid visage as the Beetlejuice? I feel like this coffee was warm at the beginning of the stream, and it's cold now. It's a mystery to everyone. I better chug this so I can get to bed. I mean, it's not going to get any easier to drink as it continues to get colder. Just saying. Thermodynamics gets me every time. Queen Dark Lady says the lights in your studio were positioned to look like they were across the mantle in game. Really? I'm gonna have to go back and look at that in the VOD height. That was not intentional. I just got lucky on that one. Yeah, Marley's ghost like took all the heat out of the coffee when he left. Bartender Billy in the YouTube chat says, "Hey Joe, never caught a stream before. You love your chaotic energy." Well, hey, these are a special set of holiday streams we do every year. Every year we do a reading of A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. That was Stave 1. If you missed the beginning of it, the VOD will be going up shortly after the stream is over. So, yeah, it was a lot of fun, though. Yeah, I feel like if people were sitting in the audience here, this wouldn't have been terrible. Now, the idea is that the set will ultimately have a big series of stages that go around. Some stages get brought forward and moved back. Yeah, I didn't have any actual bricks for the fireplace. Didn't have time to get a fortune shovel. Break clay up into little clay balls that you make bricks with. Oh, well. It's fine. Okay. So, yeah. I do like the way the, what do you call it, comes out of the tree. Oh, you know another thing I actually kind of wanted to do? So I want the set to get slightly nicer every day over the course of the reading for the people watching the VOD. Let's add a layer here to the carpet. Like little subtle things. Gabby says, first Joe Hill streamer will be coming back for the rest of the book. This was amazing. Thank you to Cub for sending me over here. Oh, I'm so glad Cub sent you over. Yeah, Cub came by earlier for a tour of the studio, and I was explaining what I was going to do tonight. So yeah, I'm glad he did. All right. So we will be back same time tomorrow night. Tomorrow morning I'm going to do a normal stream, but tomorrow night stream is going to be another reading. During the tomorrow morning stream, we're going to be working on getting some of the stuff done up in these balconies or in this back wall here. Building some of the other set pieces. I'm almost thinking like yeah, I don't know. I'm thinking of doing like I'm trying to figure out if we want to do temporary set pieces on this side, and then maybe have the like late night show monologue / desk with the couch over here, and then have the centerpiece here open up for other stuff still. Feeling it out. Don't know exactly how all that's gonna go yet. Okay. Well, anybody who came in via Twitch, just as a reminder, I'm going to post my channel link so you guys can, because the VOD will not be going up on Twitch. The VOD's going up on YouTube. Here's my YouTube channel if you want to check out my Hermitcraft episodes. And yeah, let's go ahead, and it's time to wrap up here after one last hard refresh on PayPal. Thank you to everybody who was so generous with their tips tonight. Really appreciate it. Y'all are the ones that make this show possible for everyone to enjoy. Not only financially free, but also guilt-free. So thank you to everybody who's at a point in their lives where they can afford to tip for making the show free for those who might otherwise be unable to enjoy such fun entertainment on a holiday evening such as this. Wintry times. Okay, so we are going to go ahead and wrap up the stream here. We can't do the outro music because we don't want to trigger the VOD cancellation thing. And let's see. We are going to send folks over to... I know a few people who are live right now. We already raided one of them earlier today, though. I don't like raiding people twice in one day. It feels like attention-seeking behavior. Looks like Sad Milkman is playing Minecraft. We're going to go ahead and raid Sad Milkman. And when you get over there, our raid message is, howdy y'all, Joe Hill's raid here. Thank y'all so much for hanging out and palling around. Until next time, y'all, this is Joe Hills from Nashville, Tennessee. Just kidding, it's the Beetlejuice. Keep adventuring. And y'all come back now, you hear? That's the Beverly Beetlejuice Billies. Not really, but whatever.